Hello everyone. How do you make sure that your data is always correct in the database? How do you make sure that one transaction does not influence the other transaction in the database? What are the SQL queries you need to run to make sure that one transaction is completely isolated with the other transaction? What are the things, what are the database concepts you need to learn around the isolation of one transaction to the other? That is what we are going to talk today. We are going to talk about the database isolation level. Now, this database isolation level is one of the four properties which we study when we say ACID properties of database, that is atomicity, consistency, isolation level, and durability. Now, the thing is, overall, we all know that if there is one transaction running and there is other transaction running, both of these transactions should not influence each other. But the thing is, it's very hard to do that. And it's very expensive that, hey, if one transaction is running, I should not at all influence the other transaction. So what database has done, and almost all databases have done, that they have come up with the concept of isolation level. That, yeah, two transactions should be isolated, but we can give you some kind of isolation level so that based on your use case, you can choose the one. Now, one of the isolations level could be the easiest to implement and would not cost much of a memory in the CPU for database, while other could have a performance impact. So many times you would just use the default isolation level, but at times you can also choose to use different isolation levels. Now, these isolation levels are many, but I'm going to cover three most important isolation level, that is read committed, repeatable read, and serializable. You can actually go through the public documentation and read about all the different isolation levels. So let's get started with all these isolation level one by one. Now we'll talk about the first isolation level. That's the read committed. And this is the most common isolation level. Now, this is the default isolation level in case of Postgres and many common databases as well. So here, whenever you write begin a transaction, now how do you write a transaction? There is one more video I already published where I explained how to create a basic transaction. So in a nutshell, you begin a transaction with begin and you end a transaction with commit. Now, since this is a default mode of transaction, all you need to do is to write a begin command, begin. Now, if you have two begin commands, the way it works is that the moment any other transaction commits any record, the other transaction will start to see the latest value. So here, let's say I have two transactions and one transaction got some value and then the other transaction updated the value. Now, the transaction 2 will start to get the latest value. Now, let me show it with the help of a terminal so that you can understand it better. What I have done here is that I have opened two terminals and I have connected to my local Postgres database. How do you connect to the local Postgres database? You don't need to ask anyone. You can go to the Postgres website and download. So let's do one thing. Let's begin a transaction. So since this is a default method, I'll just begin a transaction in both the tabs. And then on the left side, I'll write a command, select star from bank balance. And I would get two records, Anubhav and Arjun. Both are poor people. One has 440 rupees and the other has 200 rupees. And I would also write the similar command here, select star from bank balance. And you can see the values already present here. Now in the transaction 1, I would update the bank balance, set balance equal to balance plus 10, where ID is equal to 1. So effectively, I'm updating the balance of Anubhav by 10 rupees. Now, if you do the select statement, you can see Anubhav balance is 10 rupees incremented. However, if you still check the existing other transaction, you would still find the value for Anubhav as 200. Now, the moment I commit the value in the first transaction, then I would start to see the latest value in the second transaction. That's the 210 rupees. So this is the default isolation level. If there are two transactions running, the moment any other transaction updates any value, you would start to get the latest value in your own transaction. So some people might be okay, some people might not be okay. Some people would say that, hey, it's weird that in the same transaction, initially I got the value of 200 and then later I got the value of 210. Is it okay for me? So now, since this is easier to implement, this is the default choice for the databases, and you would also be mostly fine with this one. Now, however, sometimes people are not okay with that. Now, there can be one such example in which, let's say, your manager asks you a question that, hey, can you give me the bank balance of individual customers? And also, can you give me the sum of all the balances of all the customers? So let's do that here. So I'll run rollback command and let's see what's the problem with the first approach. And then only we'll move to the second approach. So let's say I have a begin command here and the begin command in the second one. And now let's say your manager asks that what is the balance of all the employees in your bank. So select star from bank balance and you would get some values. Meanwhile, somebody else would also update the value, update bank balance, set balance equal to balance plus 10 and then committed the value as well. So I updated everyone balance by 10 rupees. Now here, let's say there were two questions being asked from our manager. So the other was select sum of balance from bank balance. And we would get the value of 670. And then we would commit the transaction. Now, if you give this value, this data to your manager, the manager will say that, what the hell are you doing? This is just wrong. You have balance of Anubhav as 210 rupees, balance of Arjun as 440 rupees. The summation should have been 650 rupees, but you are saying sum is 670. It's just wrong. It's not correct. So in many cases, you would not be okay with the first approach. In those cases, we would need to move to the second approach, in which the moment you start the transaction, all the values should be considered from the point at which the transaction was started. That is just before the begin statement. Then it doesn't matter if any transaction updates the value or does not update the value. So that's the second approach. And that second approach is called as repeatable read. What exactly is the repeatable read? Repeatable read says that it is also called as snapshot read. This means that it reads the value prior to the start of the transaction. That means anything committed in between by other transaction will not honor that. So here is the flow of the stuffs here. So here also I have two transactions. I began two transactions and I updated some value and then I committed the value. But still the other transaction will keep on getting the older value. So that's the overall idea. You should still get the older value. The way you configure it is that using this syntax, begin transaction, isolation level, repeatable read. So let's just do that so that we understand fully how things are here. So we'll begin the transaction, isolation level, repeatable read. And let's begin the similar transaction in the second terminal as well. And then let's run the commands. Now you can see I have some values for the bank balance. And then I would update the bank balance on the left side, basically increasing everyone's value by 50 rupees. And then I would commit the value on the left side as well. Now, let's say I run the same command again. And let's see what are the values I get. I still get the same value, 450 and 220. Now let's run the command select sum of balance from bank balance. And let's see what are the value we get. You see the value is 670. Now the value is consistent. Now, if you give this value to your manager, or if you give this value for any reporting, it will make sense. So in such cases, instead of just writing begin transaction, you have to also write isolation level repeatable read, so that database comes to know that this is what you want. Any update done in between is not honored by the other transaction. So that can be the second level of isolation. Now, there is one more scenario, and that is even stricter. And this is the most strict scenario which you can take into the account at times. Now, here, the first approach, as we said, was that the moment any write operation happens, you get the latest value. The second approach was that I don't want any updates done by any other transaction. The third says that if you are trying to update a value which has been updated by any other transaction, then I would fail the overall transaction. So it makes sure that the transaction running in a way that it feels like running one after the other. If the data which current transaction is trying to modify has been modified by some other transaction, then the transaction will fail. So let's understand how it is. So basically, we have two transactions started, and let's say I got one value, that is for Anubhav, I got the value as 75. Now, let's say I update the value on the left side. Then the moment I try to update the value on the right side, it will give error that, hey, you are trying to update a value. Maybe you did a select statement on something and you are now trying to update the same thing. So since this value is updated, you would get the error. So let's see how it overall looks like so that we understand it fully. I would just run rollback command. So what's the syntax? Again, begin transaction, isolation level, serializable. And the same thing I would run on the right side. Now, on the right side, I would write select star from bank balance where ID is equal to 1. So I got some value. What's the bank balance for Anubhav? Now let's say I update the value on the left side. So I increase the balance by 5 rupees, and let's say I committed the value. So I committed the value on the left side. Now let's see what is the value do I get on the right side. You see, I still get the same value. So this is still working same as the repeatable read. Now, where does it get more strict? It will get strict the moment I run this command, update bank balance, set balance equal to balance plus, let's say 50 rupees, where ID is equal to 1. So I'm trying to update the same row which was already updated from the left side. So the moment you do that, you will get this error that you could not update the value. So in this way, it just restricts you that if the value has been modified by some other transaction, you can't modify it. So it is just more strict. So there were three overall database concurrency control level. That's the isolation level. The first one was the least strict, and the last one was more strict. These are the three common ones. If you wish to understand more and see what are the other concurrency control methods, I recommend you to go through the public doc and see what are the different isolation level. So there are 4 actually, but the first one is not possible in Postgres. So that's why I didn't cover. So yeah, that's it from my side. I hope this video was helpful to you. I recommend you that you download the PostgreSQL and run these commands by yourself so that you can open 2-3 terminals and experiment. If you experiment, then you can understand how things are working. And then integrating this SQL query with any code, Java, Python, etc. is fairly simple. I'm sure you can do that. So yeah, that's it from my side. I hope this video was helpful. Till the next time, bye.